people are part of a conversation, the more powerful it is. And when you hear that, let's say there's a terrorist, it's scary. But when you hear that there's a cell, it's way more scary. And I think we need to look at love the same way. That we need to come together in love the way some people come together in hate and in fear. Terrorism is an emotion and a sensibility turned into a political force. And I think we need to turn love and justice into a political force in a way that hasn't been demonstrated in this country in a long time. It certainly has been demonstrated historically, but right now, we're not showing up for the better angels of our nature. Last night, Donald Trump won handily in Iowa. And Vivek Ramaswamy left the race today, Asa Hutchinson left the race today. And at least based on those results in Iowa, it does seem like GOP nominee is going to be Donald Trump. So for those of us who do not wish to see Donald Trump win, this is really a moment of recognition of what seems to be happening. And if all we're offering is Biden as a response to that, then we really should be thinking about this. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around the circle. I want everybody to introduce who you are and share from your heart about how you see this moment in American history and how you see this race.
On the spot. Elisa, my name's Elisa. I am a mental health counselor in Dover, and so already I'm hearing and experiencing the, I would say, the anxiety and the uncertainty that people are feeling regarding heading into the political season. It seems to me in the country that this is a crossroads, quite a turning point in terms of what we're genuinely going to commit to on a deeper level for as individuals and as a society. And it seems like this is a significant moment in history regarding that. We've done this once before, we made a choice, and we're back again to look at a very similar choice. And I had hoped that it would be a clear, different choice this time. And that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. So, so my hope has been that you are gaining momentum under the radar, even though you're not getting all the publicity that you should be getting from the major news stations and such, but you've certainly been working your ass off everywhere.
Let me ask you a question, and Sydney, would you please get me my glasses? I think I must have put them in the purse. Thank you so much. Let me ask you about that. You live here, you've obviously got a broad network of friends in what you do and so forth. You said that people are feeling, you put it very eloquently, you said that people are feeling the anxiety. What is your impression of how people are processing this moment and how they see me and how they see the fact that Dean is, how they see the fact that you actually could vote for someone besides Joe Biden. Vote now, it will give us Trump again.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, it's like a do again. Like, here we are again. And
so make a break for it right now.
Yeah.
You have 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, my name is Larry Lane. And, you know, my thoughts are, Elisa, yeah. So, you know, very, very, I should say somewhat similar. After having been here in 2016, after being here in 2020, and having the opportunity to run with you a bit then, and beginning to understand not just your, you know, your wisdom, your ability, but beginning to understand that sort of exclusion that you're receiving from the Democratic Party is it's very frustrating. what I find myself, where I find myself is in 2020, and here now, I was at your event last night, that when I hear you speak, I feel like I would run through a brick wall to support you. I feel like I want to bring my son. And my granddaughter too. And I know that by muffling this, there's not any good that's coming from it.
Right.
We're reducing our opportunity here. And I say it's frustrating because I feel as though, and I know some of the Democratic folks that could make something different happen here. I know that they're basically good people, but somehow they're missing this.
So let me ask you a question, and also, Sydney, you know the best thing you could do for me is just to participate, just to be here with us in the circle. Nothing else, the cameras, the phone, the clipboard, because this is deep and real, and this is where we should all
Do
be.
you want me to number?
Let me ask you a question. So I don't even care about that. What I care about is you just being here with us. That would mean a lot to me. You want to come in this chair?
Yeah, can I move
Because
this? Is that
this
okay?
that emanates from people. Talk to me. This is my sense of the campaign. My sense is that when people hear me, we're golden. But there's almost a resistance to coming. So when you say you know some people who could make the difference, they won't come hear me?
What I was actually speaking about were people that are representatives in Congress.
Yeah.
Those people. I feel as though the level of the source of the exclusion is not. It's not just individuals. I think that and we know this. It's more at a party at a higher level.
Well, you know what I said? I want to tell you something. I said, and I don't want this. I don't want.
For 35 years. So our movement, SGI, World Peace Movement, nurturing Buddhism. So I think that we are kind of really sensing that the issue here is not as much political as it is moral.
Well, that's what Elizabeth was saying.
You know, it's Dr. King's birthday was yesterday, but I sort of remember hearing him saying something about morally bankrupt. I don't know if that was, if it was him, but somehow I remember those two words together. And I think this, because of my Buddhist practice, and I know that your source of healing and your Course in Miracles, so you're really coming from a point of it's not just the economics. And we talked about it a bit, you talked about it a bit last night. It's not just our gun, the volume of our guns. Other countries have the volume of the guns that we have, but there's something that's going on with our, with our spirit and with our souls about our humanity towards other people. And in our practice, that's what we're struggling to do, is to sort of make a difference one person at a time.
You know, I was on an IG Live earlier today, and it was talking about women in wellness. And so from this idea of a psychological something being wrong, I was talking about this, the codependent relationship with the DNC. We're just like we're lemmings to the sea. We're just letting ourselves walk towards a cliff. It's unbelievable. And we were talking about how many times, let's say you talk to a friend who's in a toxic relationship, you say, just walk away. That people need to go, just walk away. Just walk away. Just walk away. Because the people who are walking towards it, it was interesting last night, you were there last night, because the woman who was saying, I agree with everything you're saying, but they've decided, she would even, her words, they've decided, it's that we need to go with Joe. The room was not agreeing with her. The room was not agreeing with her. So I really, I don't think it's that people aren't disturbed, But I wonder if there's something about me and the way I'm presenting I know there's nothing wrong with the way I'm presenting myself in terms of when I'm in front of audiences, because they're getting it. But there's something, it seems to me, it's too outside the box.
I think anytime somebody steps into a well-established system that is dependent on the corruption to keep it going. If
Right.
somebody's stepping into that with any kind of sight, it gets close enough to it and starts speaking enough to it loudly, then yes, I think in my experience with some work I've done, the resistance gets louder and the wanting to keep you quiet gets stronger, and the minimizing of what you're doing is more of a priority. And that's kind of what it feels like to me.
And there's an almost unconscious fear. And would you do me a favor and close that door? Because with my hearing aid, noise in the background is really tough. They've made me on some level radioactive. And people are afraid that if I say I support her, that the mockery of her will be projected onto me. Well, it is what it is. Do you have any thoughts?
I certainly do. I'm Jane Sanders, and I have been following you since February of 2019 when we first met, when I first heard the recording of a radio interview that you had done on February 14th. And I said, I have got to meet that woman after listening to it twice. So that's why I was at the house party where we met. And in 2019, I was seeing the pushback when I would tell the people on the Newmarket Democratic Party committee that I was supporting you. I did get pushback. I resigned from the committee and I changed my affiliation back to undeclared. I am not seeing that same resistance from some of those same people.
What are they saying now, Jane?
I actually got a private message from one of them who had been attending one of your events that was, you personally were not there, but she said she was very proud of me. And I haven't asked her what she meant because through Messenger, but that was huge because 4 years ago she had a whole different opinion. So I was very, very grateful to have that message from her. She is, well, I don't want to give it away, but she's a person in power.
Mm-hmm.
So coming, like I said, coming from her. But to get back to the other general question, people resist change, and as you
Well,
were
we should be
saying,
afraid
both
of,
you.
at this point, our history is not changing.
Exactly.
People are afraid of change. We should be afraid of not changing.
Right. And I've never been fearful. I've always been sort of the entrepreneurial spirit. Quit the job.
They're planning. So is it your sense that there are a lot of, like you were talking about underground, a lot of people who aren't coming to the events but planning to vote for me?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because so much is online now. I mean, you have a whole generation who kind of lives online.
People go out less.
Huh?
People
They
go out less,
I
period.
mean, I don't need
It's
to
kind of
go
the
there.
tragedy.
I see her on TikTok, so I know what I think.
Right.
I do think that's true.
Or see me on my YouTube or something, right?
Yeah, or YouTube. Right.
But
Okay.
it's a whole different feeling from 2019. and
It is,
2020.
Jane?
Absolutely.
So
it's
the
very
fact-
encouraging to me.
Really? Well, I know that day that we were in Littleton, I think you were there, and we were going into stores and
I'm from Littleton. That's
yeah,
where I
were
grew
you
up.
there that day?
I wasn't, but I grew up there. I knew.
I mean,
that.
people, when I would hand the card, oh, you're Marianne Williamson. I mean, there was a lot of that. And a lot of, yeah, it's one of the things that I see here that I saw last time and I saw in other early primary states too, people are realizing this is serious. The choice I make next Tuesday is serious. That I do feel. I don't feel that there is just like cluelessness about the fact that it's happening, But I agree with you, it's not easy to go. You know, it would be different if Gavin Newsom was running. It would be different if someone's still within the box, you know.
Not as courageous as you.
Pardon?
Not as courageous as you. You know,
Well,
I think in
that
today's
that's-
day and age
you
gets
know,
points.
I think it does say something about how the system works, that people who, you know, and I feel that way about Dean Phillips too. He torpedoed his career, but he's willing to do this because we're all like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And this is not some little threat that is confronting us. And the fact that there's not even a robust democratic debate about it. What are your thoughts? Anything that you want to share, Josh, about where you've been?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts, definitely. I'm certainly a fan of yours. I certainly actually see you get momentum because the mainstream media has ignored you. But look at the debate in News Nation. Look at all the positive press. Look at you getting millions of followers, millions of fans on TikTok. And I admire your independence. And I have a YouTube, and I've gone out to kind of film the candidates and really try to broadcast what their message is and break through that blackout. You know, I think that's the most important. I used to be a local TV news reporter, and I, interestingly enough, got fired for speaking the truth about Scientology. And then the church, if you know them, the church went after me, threatened. And they threatened to sue. So I got fired, and then I got some decent press and was able to get a good YouTube base going on all the anti-Scientology YouTube sites. Was able to get monetized. But I figured, well, that's what I want to do. I want to try to break through that white noise and speak some truths of power. And I think with the momentum that you're getting online, I think even now compared to 4 years ago, there's just a lot. Your voting base is the younger voting base, and they more live online and go out less than ever before. So I think it's this sleeper base that you have that's going to become really a groundswell for you on the day of. If Biden's only getting 60%, I think you by far have gotten more press, or at least amongst young people, and visibility, even than Dean Phillips. So, you know, Biden gets 60, you get 40, 35, then it's a race.
Well, if I could
or
get
even
35 or 40, that would be amazing, but I'm not.
I can see it. You always want to be realistic, sure, but you know, you have a base that is sleeping.
If that's realistic, I'm beyond thrilled. I just sort of, it's something like I'm getting 3 people at a library.
But that's every candidate. Every candidate. I've been to every candidate's things. There's always a day where they, you know, have 10 people. It's everybody. It's not unique.
A lot of the young ones, so first of all, when you say a lot of the young ones, they don't come out, but are they going to come out and vote? They can't vote online.
Right. Well, it's one day, you know, so probably.
We'll see if they do.
Yeah.
And secondly,
That's why I'm here, is promoting that message and having people be aware of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are promoting that message. So shall we go into what it is?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The way I see it, for the last 50 years, there has been a war on the middle class and the poor in this country. In the 1970s, the average American a couple could afford a house, and could afford a car, and could afford a yearly vacation. And one salary could support a family of 4, and that couple could afford to send their kids to college. And there were tuition-free college situations until the 1970s, University of Texas, University of California, and University of Florida. And that was called a thriving middle class. And that's what I was raised within, and most of our parents, right, was a thriving middle class. Over the last 50 years, and I think we should all be very aware, this was strategized. This didn't just happen out of nowhere. There's a book by Nancy McLean called Democracy in Chains. And it talks about an economist named Buchanan. And he wrote a theory and ultimately got the Nobel Prize in Economics. And I don't know if he got it for this, but this is pretty awful. And he talked about the primacy of property rights and how the only way we could ensure the primacy of property rights is if we put democracy in chains. Now, let's remember, that's what slavery was. The primacy of property rights. This is my property. Don't talk to me human rights. This is my property. And that is the malevolence, that thought that property is more important than people, right? So we have never been totally without the spawn of that perspective. So what happened when he wrote this, that in order, so think what he's saying, in order to ensure the primacy of property rights, we have to put democracy in chains. Why? Because last year, the line from Lincoln where he said that the Declaration of Independence is an eternal rebuke against all forms of tyranny and repression. Because you can't say all men are created equal, endowed with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and put property rights first. And it says in the Declaration that the role of governments are instituted to secure those rights, not to secure property rights. Well, this book goes into what happened. The Koch brothers read Buchanan's work. And the Koch brothers, and remember the Koch brothers are the ones who are even today, well, one of them has died, but the Koch brother, the Koch Foundation, is the one who gave $10 million to Nikki Haley. By the way, I want to point out something else. This has been a $175 million race in Iowa. So Vivek Ramaswamy, for instance, he's a very wealthy man. It all came to naught yesterday. So it's not all about money. Right? So I thought that was really interesting. Anyway, so the Koch brothers said, oh, and they started funding. I mean, this was all strategized. If you read Sheldon Whitehouse's book about the Supreme Court, how they had this plan, how they were going to take over the Supreme Court for corporatist forces and so forth. So we ended up with a situation in which it's basically privatized everything, because private money, private power, private control is about the accumulation of wealth. The public good, but the first principle of the United States that is supposed to be operative here is that it is the government's role to broker the balance between private opportunity, liberty, which includes economic liberty. Yeah, you can start that factory if you want to, good on you. But it's the government's to balance economic liberty, any liberty, personal, individual liberty, with a concern for the common good. So the way it was supposed to work is your individual liberty means you can start that factory. Concern for the common good means, no, you cannot spew carcinogens into the river. But we become so imbalanced in the direction of the protection of private property and privatization. Everything's become about privatization. And as it becomes more and more about privatization, so how do you make it about privatization? You deregulate. I mean, how do you provide for the common good? Providing for the common good means environmental regulations. Providing for the common good means safety regulations. Providing for the common good means more money to things like healthcare and education. Providing for the common good means recognizing the importance of the public domain, which by definition means things you don't have to pay for, and which most people might not be able to pay for, but which create a thriving society. So I read this book called The Gardens of Democracy, and it used this really powerful image. It said that what's happening now is like if all the blood in the body went to one arm. Blood has to circulate, opportunity has to circulate, money has to circulate. The problem in America is not that some people get rich, but not enough people even get beyond what they feel they have to do just to make it. You can't, that's a collapse of a middle class. You can't have a thriving democracy when you don't have a thriving middle class. So, it's easy to look at Donald Trump and see the threat that he poses to democracy, and he does. I'm not saying he doesn't. But this, and I don't know if you were there yesterday, and she said she eats dinner, and I said, oh, you don't eat lunch? She said, yeah, I just eat one meal a day. And she said, I originally did it because I couldn't afford it to do otherwise, and now I like it. And I thought, I don't think I'd ever had, just someone that I'm just talking to as a friend. Right.
It's almost conditioning.
It's normal. It's like people, you know how they used to do those commercials, very powerful commercials about pedophiles, where it was showing, the commercial was showing a man, and he was carrying a little kid away, and he just looked like a nice guy holding hands with a kid. Then he turned around, and his shirt said pedophile. And it was the point of the commercial was you wouldn't have necessarily thought it. Well, I think that's true of a lot of people that we might know who are carrying more economic stress. I mean, I'm really impressed that people are holding it together as well as they are in this society today. And I think that that's what gave me, in my career, you know, people, the saying about my career used to be, nobody calls Marianne because things are going well. So I was privy to things that are happening in people's lives. But when my career began, the things that were happening, much like what you do, right? But when I began, it was, and I was the one you called, you know, the test results came back, you know, it's cancer, my child's on heroin, my husband left, someone I love died. But I felt that it was, I was sort of a crisis expert, an emotional and spiritual crisis expert, but the crisis was the exception and not the rule in someone's life. And then around the year 2000, particularly when I moved to Detroit, I met so many people, and people who I had such admiration for, particularly I was working at this church, and people who would get so dressed up on Sunday morning and dress up their little kids and come to church, and then I'd hear what living circumstances they were living with. And it was so heartbreaking. But it wasn't a crisis. Their life, to be living either in poverty or near poverty, there's a term they use, the difference between a screaming emergency and a silent emergency. A screaming emergency is, I have cancer. A screaming emergency is, my loved one died. A silent emergency is, I'm poor. A silent emergency is, I hate my job. It's the only way I can get the benefits to have health care, but I need the health care because I have whatever condition I have. There's no room for me to grow in this job. There's no promotional ability, and I'm stuck, and I can't help my kids, and I can't even give any hope to my kids because what can I tell them will be better? They're stuck with college loan debt. They're coming back to live in my basement. I mean, this is the majority of Americans on some level who are constrained with these invisible economic chains. And the ruling elite does not even see it. Because the system as it works now is predicated on the existence of this permanent middle class. A permanent underclass. But a permanent underclass today, you wouldn't necessarily know it looking at someone. You know, you wouldn't necessarily know it. They have a nice t-shirt on, they have nice jeans on, but are living in circumstances that make them feel hopeless and make them feel that there's no sense of I can have anything and do anything, which is what America is supposed to be. So I don't see anything in the current economic status of the United States that promises any change. And, you know, I saw today that there's going to be a bipartisan bill to reinstate the child tax credit, which makes me very, very happy. But still we have to ask a question. Yes, this will cut child poverty in half. And I'm very happy about it. I don't mean to poo-poo that. I'm thrilled about it. And at the same time, there should not be one child living in poverty in the United States, and there doesn't need to be. There should not be one hungry child in the United States. So I see it very differently than the sort of political elite, what do they call it, corporatocracy system offers us. I think we need to make a bold change. I think we need an economic turnaround. I think we need a president who comes in and says, you know, this is fine for everybody except the people. This is fine for the donor class. But when Abraham Lincoln stood on the field of battle at Gettysburg, he said that the people who died there had died so that a government of the people and by the people and for the people would not perish from the earth. To me, it's perishing. I mean, it's perishing right now. If you have 39% of Americans who say that they regularly skip meals in order to pay their rent, I mean, that's so staggering to me. So you help me become president, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have an economic new beginning. We are going to cut the cord with the chapter of Neoliberal Economics that produced all this. And for anyone who doesn't know, Neoliberal Economics simply means corporate rule. And it is corporate rule. It is, corporations in America today have more, in terms of how things actually go down, arguably have more power than the US government. And that economic unholy alliance between government and corporations, that is soft fascism. Because the undue influence of these corporate entities through their lobbying, through their saying, if you don't vote to deregulate, and they're very polite, probably, you're a congressman, they come into your office, and Congressman, we really think that, that particular safety regulation is, it's costing us a lot of money. I think it's costing us, we can't even make more create more jobs, Congressman, it's making it us hard to manufacture the products that we need. So let's say you're a congressman, you say, well, you know what, I don't really buy that because your business model really hasn't been about job creation, it's been about job elimination. And I understand what you're saying about your profits, but I really think the safety of your customers comes first. You know how the lobbyist responds? Thank you very much for meeting with me, Congressman. I'm really sorry. Of course, we're very disappointed, but I understand. And he knows, and you know, that he's going to go back to the office, and there's going to be a little check next to your name. Primary the bastard. And everybody knows it, and everybody can be really polite. Primary him. We got to primary him. And because of the money that is allowed into the system because of Citizens United, so much money can be spent. And that's how the NRA works. And that's America today.
Israel. A lot of people do
donors, pardon?
Israel, I'm thinking of Jamal Bowman,
Yeah,
for his independent stance getting primaried, and the whole establishment now is just raising millions. That's how they do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at this point, they control Washington. They've turned Washington into a system of legalized bribery. And the only way we can change this is if we, the people, step in. There is nothing else. And we step in with a revolution at the ballot box. A revolution at the ballot box. And nothing is a more powerful opening shot in that revolution than what happens here in New Hampshire 1 week from today. I mean, it's that powerful what happens in the New Hampshire. Because if Biden wins big next Tuesday, it's going to be very difficult to convince anyone that anything else is possible. But if New Hampshire says, actually, we need universal health care, tuition-free college, and tech school. Both of which, and another thing I want to mention, the majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want those things. So when people say, if anyone says, oh, she's so far out, she's so far left, everything that I talk about is considered a moderate position in every other advanced democracy. And both Republicans and Democrats want. Both Republicans and Democrats, interestingly enough, the majority of Republicans as well as Democrats, including gun owners, want more gun safety laws, common sense gun safety laws, which I think is interesting too. In these areas, in my entire experience doing this, my sense is that the American people are not the problem. I mean, I think we're decent people. We're not better than other people, but I really, the older I get, the more I do all this, the more I see the profundity of the kind of Jeffersonian principle that if we leave it in your hands, no matter who you come from, and obviously they not all of them, but Jefferson himself, it's complicated, but I don't need to tell you American history, that regardless where you come from, regardless how much money you have, regardless of anything, as long as you were educated, public education, so that we know your critical thought processes make you strong enough to govern a great nation, as long as we have free press so that you're informed, as long as we have freedom of assembly so we can talk about it, that your decision will be over time, maybe not every time, but over time, we will do better trusting in that than trusting a king, an aristocracy, or political elite. It's really profound. this populism that's at the root of all this, and that people have died for. So we need paid family leave, we need subsidized childcare. There are so many people in this country who are working at jobs that they hate, but they have to do it to afford the childcare. And other people who aren't having children for no other reason than they don't know how they could afford it. We need guaranteed affordable housing. You have 31,000, it would take 31,000 units of housing here just in New Hampshire to get out of the housing hole. So we need a domestic Marshall Plan for housing. I mean, this is the stuff we need to do. We need a guaranteed living wage. Americans are hardwired for going big. We're hardwired for doing great things. And it's depressing us that we're only doing little things. It's depressing the spirit. The spirit of America is kind of brash. We do big things. And Americans like being called to that. That's in our nature. And now what politics has done is just speaks to your selfishness. We can give you this, we can give you that. Nobody's been called to this deeply meaningful. And I think people like to be called to what is deeply meaningful. I know when we started Project Angel Food, the AIDS crisis was this really big deal. The AIDS crisis was very much like COVID, but in reverse. It was like COVID, it was all anybody was talking about. With COVID, it was very easy to get, but the chances were you would survive. AIDS was the opposite. It was very difficult to get, but if you got it, the chances were that you would not survive. When we started these nonprofits and started the support groups and started the feeding people and all of the things that we did, people would tell me all the time who were not sick, who were the volunteers, how much this is doing for me. Because hope is born of participation in hopeful solutions. We want to be called to something great. We want to be called to something great. People, and in politics, they're afraid that you won't vote for me if I ask you to show up bigger in your life. I think people are ready. I think people are, that's what's happening. We're numbed, we're dumbed down, we're self-medicated. And that's what's happening right now with this race. People are just kind of like, yeah, it's probably a bad idea that it's Biden. Yeah, that's how people are. And
in both parties, it's a sleepwalk.
And look how they slammed me down last time for talking about that. But notice the stuff they were saying last time, they're not even saying this time because so much of what they were saying has been debunked. So, we need those things. We need a complete economic U-turn. And we need a Department of Peace so that we're not just, we're more than a living war machine. And we need a Department of Children and Youth so that we can commit to our children. And we need a mass mobilization for a dirty economy to a clean economy. And we need to end America's drug war. Now, why is it that the political media industrial complex has not wanted me even heard? I mean, last time, tonight, Ron DeSantis in Manchester, New Hampshire, is having a CNN town hall.
Rather go to yours.
And
Choose you over Ron, easy.
Yeah. And the other day, Elon Musk gave Dean Phillips a Twitter Spaces. So you ask yourself, well, why don't they want to let me in? Is it that I'm kooky?
It's real.
No, it's
your integrity.
It's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying.
Because his message actually resonates with people. There's such a deep distrust in media and government.
You could just hear it in the ethers. Do not let that woman have a viral moment.
Right.
And it was interesting because the day after I announced, I was on Jonathan Karl, ABC in the morning, and I was on Jonathan Capehart in MSNBC. And I think they heard what I had to say, and they said, shut this thing down right now.
You're too good.
Shut this thing down right now, right? And they're trying to step on you and just get off. And I feel that that's a microcosm for how Americans experience this country. With money people squash you down, and the messages go away and do as you're told. Now, I look at the people in this room. It is saying something. Women, black man, I assume you're talented.
Thank you. I'd like to hope so.
If you are a certain level of got it going on, you can make it in America today. But you shouldn't have to have it going on.
I'm barely making it anyway.
Well, that's true. I mean, but I mean, if you compare this to what it was 100 years ago, way more people are let in the room.
No.
But
60 years
way
ago,
too many
50.
people were not. So that's why over the next 7 days, this is an extraordinary moment. I honestly believe that if we just go with Joe, and as I mentioned last night, Democrats also aren't dealing with the fact that they're going to have this Bobby Kennedy element to deal with. Don't kid yourself, because the elite likes to think, well, we put him down in our magazines, and we call him a lunatic at our dinner parties, so we don't even have to look at what's happening over there. So that's what I believe is happening. I believe that we really do offer people a new beginning, a boldness, and John F. Kennedy used to use the word vigor. We need some vigor. He was also on speed. I mean, we know things now about all that vigor. We know that now. But hey, Dr. Feelgood was, all that stuff was real. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing here. And I want to hear from you, your questions, your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, because we have to try to work a political miracle in the next 7 days.
I have comments.
Okay, please.
I really don't believe that any of this suppression has anything to do with you personally.
Thank you, that's
Obviously.
helpful.
It's your
Because
message.
I really appreciate you saying that, Jane. I was saying to Wendy yesterday, it's very difficult not to take this personally. You wake up every morning, somebody's insulting you, condescending, putting you down, calling you. I was on some radio show here in New Hampshire yesterday, and somebody said, I'm not interested in a fortune teller who's. And then I know they do that to other people, but you're right. It's hard not to take it personally.
Of course, but no, it's because your message is going to resonate. As was said, it's a matter of people hearing you, and once they hear you, they cannot unhear you, which is what happened to me. I literally did not know who you were until February 15th, 2019. And then 2 days later, I was like, I want to work on your campaign.
And 2 days ago, and we see this, I think last night the energy was there, the night before, where one woman said, I came here planning to be with the write-in Biden sign, and I'm, no, people, but that's why they've worked hard to invisibilize me.
Yes, it's not anything that you are doing. It's not a character thing. It's your message.
Well, what you represent. It's what you represent. It's what you're bringing to a nation that desperately needs what you represent. And I think that people want to, you had said that people are numb, self-numbing and depressed because they're, I think, cut off from the goodness of who they really are. And so when they get to hear you speak and they're in your presence, there's a waking upness.
Yeah.
And it's like how, if more people, if it could be more of that, more exposure, more of, then the wake upness can stay awake a little longer to make a momentum. And I feel like that's what is really wanted and needed, and people are looking for that desperately. And I think that's why there's so much, like in this state, there's so much opioid issues and so much investment in the numbing and escaping, because they're wanting something more and new and calls to who they are.
The question for me is, why was I not able to achieve that? I mean,
You're achieving so much.
Because they're making a deliberate effort to silence you. You know, I mean, the thing I like about you, and one of the reasons that Trump won, is because he said, challenge the whole system, make these dramatic overhauls. Let's talk about trade, let's talk about some other issues. He didn't follow through. The other half of his message was incredibly vitriolic. But what a compelling general election message that you have when you say create a Department of Peace. Let's, Yemen, Israel, for the past 20 years, Iraq, all these foreign entanglements where we could be spending that money directly in healthcare. Especially after Trump's pick of housing and urban development chair, for you to recognize housing as a human right, that is dangerously radical for the people who are holding that power. They don't want you to think in that bigger picture. Yeah,
to let other people.
Right. And that's you can say you support universal basic income, but let's keep within the confines of the political conversation. You're actually talking to people on the ground who are starving, and that's why they're scared, because you're a good communicator, and that's why I'm here, to get that message out despite this intended blackout, because the elite's whole way of life is going to be thrown out the window if you're president. And you're the only candidate that is really talking about that in a very specific way. And they're shaking their boots, but you're still breaking through in a big way, I think.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I agree with
100%.
100%.
100%. 100%.
I don't know the reason. I don't
That's
really.
right, you. Let me give you a hug.
Yeah, it's so joyful to sit in with all of you. As are you.
Someone like Nikki Haley. I mean, she
That's
seems
interesting.
to have so, we're going to have a debate. It's going to be Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. The whole Ron DeSantis, I mean, that's a whole story, by itself. But I don't know if I was just comparing two women. And I'm going like, this woman is like, she's so incapable compared to you. But that party, for some reason, it's like, let's give her at least the air time. I don't know how, I guess $10 million doesn't hurt, coming from the Koch Foundation. I didn't know about that. But I think, one of the problems, and I don't know the financial side of your campaign, but if you have $10 million, that's a big...
Well, that was the biggest damage of their not putting me on mainstream TV.
Right.
We've raised a fraction, we've only raised half of what we raised last time in the same period of time, because I was on CNN. I had a CNN town hall. I was on MSNBC. I mean, so many people say, I talk to my friends, they don't even know you're running.
You would have qualified for a debate against Biden if they allowed that to happen. You would have qualified for a debate against Biden if they allowed it to happen easily. So you can see this blackout. They're not even doing it.
Excuse me. The DNC said, thank you, darling. The DNC, I remember Simone Sanders on MSNBC one day saying, there are not going to be debates. We have our candidate.
Yep.
There are not going to be debates. And one of the things that Jen Kuger has said quite a lot, by suppressing our candidacies, they have given all the oxygen to the Republicans.
Yeah.
All the oxygen to the Republicans. Brilliant guys, genius. What geniuses came out with that? So it's like Janica and Dean have said, when we speak, we talk the Democratic line. And they've said, nope, nobody's going to do that until Biden chooses to give a talk. And Kamala Harris is not. People are going to be thinking, well, when I vote for an 81-year-old, it's reasonable to consider the possibility that the vice president will take over at some point. The majority of Americans would be going,
Right.
Another brilliant move on their part, that they think it's also cosmetic.
That they clearly
That's a lot
have not
cheaper.
learned from history. Because I also remember 1968.
Eugene McCarthy, yeah.
And I remember what happened after the convention. because my aunt was living in Chicago, when Chicago was on fire, because people were so upset that their votes had been cast aside because they wanted Eugene McCarthy as the nominee.
Well, there was violence in the streets in Chicago. I think it's interesting that this is going to be another Chicago.
I know, it's going to be in Chicago again, I'm like,
Yeah.
but, and then 2016, derailing Bernie, quite deliberately,
Right.
and doing it again to him in 2020.
Doing it again in 2020.
You know,
You're in
so-
good company.
That's true.
And then Bernie, endorsing Biden.
Yeah.
Did you see the note I wrote to him? He sent
What'd
out
you
a-
say?
He sent out an email. I can tell you exactly what I said. He sent out an email saying, how is it that we are in this position? How is it that it looks like someone with all of these indictments could possibly be the Republican nominee? How is it? And he had several questions. And then he invited feedback. He
Is
said,
it what?
feedback. He said,
Yeah, oh,
keep it
okay,
short.
good. I want to hear what you said.
So I said, those are all great questions, Bernie, and I have a question for you. How can you continue to support Biden when you know we need massive shifts now? And his approach is more incremental. Marianne Williamson is offering a platform of humanitarian policies and hope, capital H, closely aligned with yours. She publicly supported you in 2016 and 2020. Please reconsider your decision so we can bring real change to the American people. And I
Beautiful.
signed it with my full name.
Kick
Jan
ass. Well
Sanders,
written. Nice.
Yeah, right.
In New Hampshire.
Well,
He asked.
there was an article in The Guardian the other day, and he said, we're going to lose if we don't start offering the working people of the United States something more. And I tweeted, with all due respect, Senator, there is a candidate whose agenda is done.
Before your eyes.
Yeah,
Right
and,
here.
and you know each other.
But I'm not
I mean,
one of them.
Yeah.
Even if I was a congresswoman, I guess it would make the difference.
Well, you're getting a lot more momentum than Dean, and he is a congressman. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I
You
think
think? Well, we'll
I think you have
see.
much stronger social media following. You get much stronger views.
Well, he's
And,
gotten,
He's making traction too. He also had an event where nobody showed up. That became a lot more famous.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't even like that they're talking about. I mean, I think he has a good campaign. I don't even like that they're talking about him more than you on occasion. The mainstream media, the social media is the complete opposite. The fact that I think he went on Pod Save America. How come that's a question have you tried connecting to Pod Save America? How come they keep flipping you off?
They had me on last time.
Okay, right,
They
in
wouldn't have me on
2019,
this time.
right?
He mentioned me and said, she's just doing it for clout. I mean, this is the
But
thing.
they have
People
Dina,
say-
it's like,
When people say I'm doing this for ego, I want to ask you how you think waking up every morning
Yeah,
to
right.
the insults, to the bad pictures, to the condescension, to the lies, to the smears, to the need to raise money, the need to put in my own money, how you think this isn't good for your ego.
right.
This is so not an
Not
ego
a
stroke.
choice.
This is the most humbling. Like I said, I walked in here today.
Yeah.
I'm used to a career. So here it's free. Nobody will come. But if I was talking about personal growth and relationships and stuff, it would be full, and people would pay $50 each. So some people would say, "Isn't that a sign to stay in that career?" I understand, but for whatever reason, it hasn't felt that that's the sign.
Well, you've had 4 decades of helping people. It's a logical next step.
Yeah, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah.
It just feels to me the natural extension. Let's do for the country what we feel has been done for us, because I think that the personal growth conversation has infused our hearts enough. We have a critical mass. You were talking about being Buddhist. I'm assuming all of you, everybody these days.
Barack Obama had won in Iowa. He had just won in Iowa. And he came here like the next day.
Yeah.
I was at home, I was working from home. I had a BlackBerry, and I said, you know what? I heard he was coming into Pease, right in Portsmouth. I live in Portsmouth. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here? This, you know, I think I can go see this guy. It's in the afternoon. I wasn't going to cheat on my work. I got my BlackBerry. They called me. I'm looking at it. I'll come out. So I went over there, and it was snowing just like it is today. And we had to wait outside. I got there, and there were about 200 people that were in line. And they were all white. I might have been 3 black people there. And some of them I always say this, but I say it very respectfully, it's those little white-haired old ladies. They were in line.
Blue-haired ladies.
And I'm going like, wait a minute, man, something's going on here. And we finally got inside, excitement, he comes in, rolled his sleeves up. I mean, it was an hour later, and he finally spoke. It was cold in there. But I left, 2 things hit me. Something's going on here. And they don't care if this guy's green, but something's got this place popping. And we saw what happened. The other thing was, I just said, if you do not, to myself, if you don't work here and work with this 100% and he loses, you're not going to have anyone that you can blame but yourself. And that was my connection there. But I got a chance, I knocked on doors all the way up to 7 o'clock election night. And I would knock on the door, somebody would open the door, tell me that they were good. You don't even have to worry, son. They're calling me son. These little old ladies. I'm with you. We're with them. I'd have to go to the street. I'd cry and then go to the next door. So the question I wanted to ask, and I know that there's this goodness and there's something in America that is there. I know it. We saw it. Now, what he did politically and the rights and the mistakes and all of that, that's aside. That role is, you're going to make a mistake if you're a leader, especially in a country. If you're a leader in a corporation, if you're a leader in a family, it doesn't.
Right.
You're going to have certain things.
Right.
But the energy and something was popping that
Right.
people were like, I'm ready for.
Right.
And that's what your message is no less relevant, sound.
In my other career, although to me it's really one, but in my career as an author, that's what the reaction was to me. So, and I know that when people hear me, but Oprah opened the door. People saw me on Oprah. And even though there were some elements trying to put me down, etc., her power to open the door was so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't had anyone,
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, no
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even, no one. And I think it's that radioactive thing. Well, they make fun of her. So if I say anything, and you can, it's amazing how people who are going to support me and then 3 days later don't. And I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
That's very
I'm
revealing.
envious of what you're saying. And I've had that experience in my other career, and
That's a
so
big
this is very
deal.
humbling for me, it's like, yeah. And I think that if there was more people who heard me, and so as it is, we'll see what happens on next Tuesday, but.
I think you'll surprise a lot of people. I think you'll surprise a lot of people. I think the anti-establishment message is the norm now. But you're the only candidate really talking about it and talking about this massive overhaul that's incredibly needed.
And that's why they're working so hard to keep you quiet, in my
What'd
opinion.
Oh,
you
yeah.
say?
That's why they're working so hard to keep you quiet, in my opinion.
Because it's changing their way of life, it's changing the way they do business.
I feel if we had the time and we had the money, the way it works is, if we could get up to, let's say, 18%, they would have to flip over and showing you. If we don't get a high enough percentage next Tuesday, then I don't see it continuing, which is sad because I think that it would build, you know.
And it would be easier for maybe that big, somebody that's a little bit in the shadows.
That's right.
That would be
If
easier.
we could do, that's why this week is so important,
Yes.
you know.
Now the attention is here, so a lot of people are out to lunch until Iowa finally happened.
Right.
And I think, Gary, when you were talking about going house to house, now it's just going, I think, you know, things have changed in America about going up to people's houses, but even just walking down the street with those palm cards, that's really what, you know, if you would take palm cards, everybody just take palm cards and just walking up and down the
I'd
street.
be happy to.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
and sort of decentralized, not even us telling you. I'm still here, you're still here. It's so funny, when I said that just now, I had a deja vu, almost like I dreamed of this moment. I'm still here.
And you are.
All I know is that I wake up in the morning and I say, am I supposed to quit today?
Hell no.
I haven't heard quit today. So I'm very grateful to all of you, and I'm grateful to you for putting this on your YouTube.
Of course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, and this is a great look, and I will say it's so cool. You're so down to earth. Like, not every event is gonna have 1 million people. But the fact that you've been talking for an hour and a half with just us shows the respect, like how you'll respect America once you become president. Like, just wanting to talk to all of us and just so nice to have a candidate who doesn't kind of feel above everybody, you know. So respect for that.
A long time ago in my career, the fewer people in the room, the deeper you can go.
Yes, always. Yeah. Well, you got some deep moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, you know, in my work where you could have an hour counseling one person, and it's shaking the world more than 1,000
Yep.
people, because it's on and the level of affecting the field, as it were. I don't think it's about normal laws of time and space and size and form.
No. There's a
It's
message.
about, I always say, although I think I'm not sure I'm being proven right here, I've always said to people, there are two ways of looking at social change, on the horizontal or the vertical. You probably heard me talk about that. So if you're looking at social changes, you just got to convince more people, then you're always tempted to dumb it down. But look at it as vertical. Tell the
Right.
truth as deeply as you can discern it. And then at some point it flips over. I don't know if that's working. I think it would. It's just we've taken so many hits, but who knows? Meanwhile, we're doing everything we know to do. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
This is
also-
awesome.
Yes.
What amazing, amazing.
Yeah. So let's close our eyes and imagine the world that we want to see. And in the world we want to see, we see a world in which there is no war. And let's go around the room and each of us begin a sentence, I see an America in which, so that we can conceptualize, just as we're told so often, imagine the world you want. Imagine the life you want. Imagine the career you want. Let's imagine the America we want. So, Gary, describe the America that you would want to see.
So, I want to see an America where happiness is in abundance, and consideration, peace, respect, safety, no fear in everyone, and just a considerate humanity in our country
Wow.
and around the world.
Wow. I mean, just even to imagine that, you know? Wow.
Thank you.
Jane?
I imagine a world where everyone can thrive.
Mm.
because that will bring peace and the abundance. And it's there. We just have to make those changes.
And the thing is, we will either go for that, or we won't even survive as a species.
Nope.
We will go for it all, or we will lose it all. And that's true of our democracy, that's true of our country. We're either going to go for it all, or we could lose it all. How can you go up against Donald Trump again and say, we'll give you some?
I envision an America that the people experience less struggle and are re-inspired and have hope again. I think we really need to let go of the struggle, and there are so many basics that people don't have that they need to have, and a president like you would be able to provide, that would be able to re-inspire and bring hope again to the people of America.
I envision an America where housing is a right, is a human right, where healthcare is a human right. And I envision America that is less angry, less vitriolic, but I envision that vision through allowing
It the exact same way that you do.
Yeah.
People are living in struggle.
Most
People
Americans
are living
do.
in survival, and it just takes a toll on your nervous system after a while.
Yeah.
And the stress is bubbling over. I see that in my own life. That's when I just, the stress is just, you're not at your best. Would you like to add anything?
I'm not really supposed to be part of this, but I like what you said about kind of the anger. I definitely noticed that vitriol and the divisions that are frankly superficial, and I would like to see people overcome that towards the greater good.
The vast majority of Americans would agree with everything we said. On the left, on the right, libertarian, we've got to come out of these silos. These silos are really, this is really hurting us. This is really hurting us. It's just got to just think of us, we're humans, we're Americans. At a certain point, your sex, your sexuality, your color, your religion, your age, enough.
Yeah, the labels
Right?
are very harmful.
It is really become, because then we complain about the division, but we create the division every time we speak from a place of, well, I'm a this.
Yeah.
Partly. This is my religion, this is my sex, this is my sexuality. That's an aspect, and it's important, but there's something bigger, our humanity.
Yeah.
How about you, Marianne?
Mhm.
How about you?
Everything that everybody said. You know, I had a dream once, many years ago, and I was walking in with somebody to, it must have been like a restaurant. It was a huge round room. And in the middle of the room, there are these big fountains. And everything in the room was either white, gold, turquoise, or emerald green. And it was like a restaurant in that everybody was sitting at a booth. But the booths were shaped like swans. And when I walked in, everybody stopped their conversations and went, "Hi." But I knew it wasn't because it was me, it was because a human being had walked in. And I thought, wow, this is what heaven on earth would be. It's like everybody was so happy in the room. Everybody was so happy, and it was so beautiful, and then a human being walked in. A human being? Hi.
It's beautiful.
I was like, wow, a human being walked in.
That's beautiful.
Not a comparison, but you mentioned that you're Buddhist. It's kind of amusing. I am in the meditative mindfulness teaching, and I actually have to write a paper that I have to present a 10 to 15 minute talk tonight at 8 o'clock, and I didn't realize it until about midnight last night. So anyway, I went there is a Buddhist center in Newmarket. I didn't know it was there until 3 or 4 years ago. And New Year's Day was the first time I ever went there. And that's the way I was treated. When I walked in to the center, hi.
I know.
It was like I couldn't wait to go back.
You know where else you see that? You see that in babies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why I love them so much.
Yeah.
Like my granddaughter. Hi.
Yeah, yeah, it was so wonderful.
They don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders yet,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, the funniest part, just sort of as an aside, people were talking about one woman had come 3 hours, someone else had come like an hour and a half. So, how far did you come? A mile.
Lucky
It's
you.
Yeah. It's
So
a
this is
little- I
where
could
you
walk
live
there.
now.
Yeah, I could walk there.
That's
I
fantastic.
see people, I was told, when they have their week-long silent retreats and they'll send people out for walks, I see them come up to the four corners that I live at and turn around and go back. And they said, yeah, they've
That's
come
such a
from the
blessing on the
center.
neighborhood.
And I had no idea. It was a Facebook post. Someone was saying, what are all those sirens? We joke about it. It's the cats of Newmarket. It's the noises, someone's setting off fireworks. Everyone's got a comment on it. And this time it was sirens. And they said, it's down at the end of Shady Lane. It's at the Buddhist Center. And the conversation immediately pivoted to, there's a Buddhist Center in
What's
town?
Buddhist Center? Wow. Well, that's the high side. Number one, that's the high side of Facebook. But also maybe it's a reminder to all of us to get busy on social media over the next 7 days.
Yeah.
Tell
Right.
your friends to tell their friends to tell their friends.
That's what we have to do right now.
Yeah. Oh, I've changed
Tell your friends
my,
and tell your friends. Give them the flyer, send them to for those of you who might be watching, go to the events page at marianne2024.com and join us sometime. January 17th, which is tomorrow, Concord at 4 p.m., January 18th in Keene, 12 p.m., and 7 p.m. in Portsmouth on Saturday at the South Church Unitarian Universalist. And there will be more. Thank you. Thank you.